moonshine, dreams of night unwind. Two Kings coffee grind, kickstart heart and mind. Roasted beans so fine, aromatic line. Pour and stay, oh wow, sips that make you smile. Two Kings blended better. Sip the stream, feel lighter. Morning bliss, let's
Hey there, coffee lovers. Get ready for a deep dive into a company that's brewing up way more than just your average cup of joe.
Definitely more than just a caffeine fix.
We're talking about Two Kings Coffee, and let me tell you, they've got me hooked.
Oh,
Yeah, I'm a sucker for a good story, and when you sent this over, I knew we had to unpack it together.
Yeah, it's a good one.
So what was it about Two Kings that caught your eye? What made you think of them for a deep dive?
Well, their About Us page alone had me intrigued. Ethically sourced premium coffee brand.
Those are some bold words to live up to.
Right. I was curious to see if they could back it up.
Yeah, those terms get thrown around a lot these days, but with Two Kings, something about it felt different.
It's the story behind the brand, I think.
You're right.
The whole father-son duo, the focus on legacy and weaving in social consciousness.
That's not your typical coffee company playbook.
Not at all. It's like they're saying, yeah, we're a coffee company, but we're also playing the long game here.
Totally. And speaking of playing the long game, their name, Two Kings, it's not just a catchy title.
Right.
It's literally about the father and son who founded the company building something they can pass down.
Which is really cool to see.
I love that they're so upfront about that generational wealth building aspect.
Yeah.
It's refreshing, especially when most companies kind of tiptoe around the money conversation.
It's like they're saying, hey, we're not just here to sell coffee. We're here to build a legacy. And not just for themselves, but for the communities they represent.
Especially as they put it, Black and brown people.
Mm-hmm.
This idea of inheritance, of building something you can pass down. That's powerful for any community, but particularly those who haven't always had equal opportunities to build wealth.
It's true, and it ties into this larger conversation about economic empowerment and closing the wealth gap, which is pretty remarkable for a coffee company to take on.
Absolutely. But let's get back to the coffee itself for a second.
Yeah.
They claim to want to change the perception of specialty coffee, which really piqued my interest. What do you think they're trying to challenge there?
Specialty coffee has a certain reputation, right? It can feel really exclusive, even intimidating to some folks. Expensive beans with fancy names, complicated brewing rituals. It can be a real barrier for everyday coffee drinkers.
You're preaching to the choir. I once spent an absurd amount on a bag of beans that promised notes of sun-dried tomato and dark chocolate. Ended up tasting like burnt toast.
You and me both.
But I think that's what Two Kings is trying to address. They're going for quality and ethical sourcing, but also approachability. They want everyone to feel welcome in the world of specialty coffee.
I think that's a great goal.
And their commitment to doing it in a socially conscious way is central to that.
Absolutely. The coffee industry has a complex and, frankly, often dark history.
Yeah.
Colonialism, exploitation. It's not pretty. So seeing a company acknowledge that and actively work to change it within the industry is significant.
You mentioned underrepresented communities. How does that fit into the picture?
It's about changing who gets a seat at the table, literally and figuratively. When we talk about ethical sourcing, we have to talk about the farmers, the producers, the communities where coffee is grown.
Yeah.
Giving those communities a voice, empowering them, that's social consciousness in action.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay, so we've covered the mission, the vision, the why behind Two Kings.
We've laid the groundwork.
But what about the coffee itself? We've talked a lot about their aspirations, but how does it translate to the actual cup?
Well, their website highlights a few brewing methods: drip, French press, and cold brew, which seems very on trend, by the way.
They definitely seem to have their finger on the pulse of what's popular.
So for those of us who are not coffee connoisseurs,
Right.
Can you break down what makes each brewing method different?
Of course. Each method extracts the flavors of the coffee in different ways. Drip coffee is your classic consistent cup. French press gives you a richer, heavier brew because the coffee grounds steep directly in the hot water. And cold brew, that's all about smooth, low acidity flavor because it's steeped for hours in cold water. Interesting. And I noticed they're really proud of the fact that they roast their beans on the day of shipping. What's the significance of that?
Freshness is everything in the coffee world. Think about it like bread. You want that bakery fresh loaf, not the one that's been sitting on the shelf for a week. Same with coffee. The longer those beans sit around after roasting, the more their flavors fade.
So it's all about capturing those peak flavors.
Exactly. And speaking of capturing things, remember that dossier you mentioned earlier?
Oh, right. On their website. I completely forgot about that. What do you think that's all about?
It sounds intriguing, right? Like a treasure trove of information about their process, their sourcing, maybe even their impact.
Right.
We'll have to delve into that later.
Okay, you've piqued my curiosity.
Yeah.
I'm even more eager to dive into that. We've covered a lot of ground here. Their story, their values, their approach to coffee, but it feels like we're just scratching the surface.
We are. There are so many layers to this company. It's not just a caffeine fix, it's a whole philosophy.
You know, it's fascinating to me how Two Kings is really embracing this idea of being a mission-driven company.
Yeah.
It's like they're saying their coffee is just one piece of a much bigger puzzle.
It's definitely a growing trend, and not just in the coffee world. Consumers, especially younger generations, are more conscious than ever about where their money is going and what a company stands for.
It's like they're voting with their wallets, right?
Exactly.
Supporting businesses that align with their values. But what's fueling this shift? Why are more companies choosing to lead with their mission?
I think a big part of it is transparency. With social media and the internet, it's easier than ever for consumers to see behind the curtain, so to speak. They can research a company's practices, their supply chain, their impact on the environment and communities.
So it's not enough to just say you're doing good.
Yeah.
You have to actually walk the walk.
Exactly. Consumers are savvy. They can sniff out a marketing ploy a mile away. They want authenticity, and they want to see real action backing up those values.
Which brings us back to Two Kings. I have to admit, their transparency about their mission and business practices is pretty impressive.
Yeah.
They're not shying away from the profit motive, but they're also very clear about how they plan to use their success to empower others.
And that's where their emphasis on intergenerational wealth becomes really interesting. It's not just about making money, it's about changing the narrative, especially for communities that have historically been excluded from those opportunities.
Okay, so let's dive into that a bit more. How does Two Kings actually go about promoting this idea of intergenerational wealth? I'm curious to know if it's more than just a tagline.
Well, for starters, they're incredibly vocal about their commitment to supporting Black and brown entrepreneurs. They feature stories on their website highlighting other businesses owned by people of color, and they actively participate in events and initiatives aimed at promoting financial literacy and economic empowerment in these communities.
So they're putting their money where their mouth is, so to speak. They're not just
Right.
talking about change. They're actively participating in it.
Precisely. And that's a powerful message to send both the consumers and to other businesses. They're demonstrating that success and social responsibility aren't mutually exclusive. In fact, they can complement and amplify each other.
It does make you wonder, though, how does this all connect back to the coffee itself? We've talked a lot about their mission, their values, their impact, but what about the actual taste? What sets their coffee apart from other specialty brands?
That's a great question, and it's where things get really interesting on a technical level. Remember we briefly touched on third wave coffee earlier?
Yes, it's been bugging me ever since.
Suckles?
What exactly does that mean, and how does Two Kings fit into that whole movement?
Okay, so imagine the evolution of coffee like waves, right? Each wave represents a significant shift in how we produce, consume, and even think about coffee.
Yes, I'm following you. So what was the first wave?
The first wave was all about accessibility. Think instant coffee mass production, your Folgers and Maxwell Houses of the world. It wasn't necessarily about the nuanced flavors, but it made coffee a staple in homes everywhere.
Convenience over complexity.
Got it.
What about the second wave?
The second wave brought us the rise of specialty coffee shops. Starbucks is a prime example. They introduced the world to things like lattes, cappuccinos, different roasts, and a more gourmet coffee experience.
Okay, so it was about elevating the coffee experience, introducing more variety and craftsmanship. So where does third wave coffee come in?
The third wave takes those principles of quality and craftsmanship to a whole other level. It's about treating coffee like a true art form from bean to cup. Think direct trade, single origin beans, meticulous roasting techniques, and a focus on sustainability and ethical sourcing. It's about appreciating those complex flavors, the stories behind the beans, and the craft of the roast master.
So it's like the difference between a mass-produced beer and a craft brew. Right.
Exactly. It's about slowing down, savoring the experience, and appreciating all the nuances. And this is where Two Kings aligns perfectly. Remember how they emphasize fresh roasting and their commitment to sourcing high-quality beans?
Yes. They even mentioned specific regions where they source their beans, like Ethiopia and Guatemala.
Exactly. They're not just buying whatever beans are cheapest. They're carefully selecting beans based on their flavor profiles, their origins, and the ethical practices of the farms they work with.
So they're not just riding the third wave coffee trend. They're deeply entrenched in that philosophy. It's woven into the fabric of their business.
Precisely. And I think that's what makes them so fascinating. They've managed to bridge the gap between a mission-driven company and a purveyor of truly exceptional coffee. It's not an either-or proposition for them. It's both.
This is incredible. I'm learning so much about coffee. I had no idea there were all these layers to the industry.
There's always more to uncover, and that's the beauty of it. But speaking of uncovering things, what about that mysterious dossier they mentioned? Should we take a peek inside?
Oh, yes. Let's dive into that rabbit hole. I'm dying to know what hidden gems we'll find. Okay, I am so ready for this dossier. Let's crack it open. What's inside?
Well, think of it less like a secret document and more like,
Like a window.
yeah, exactly, like a window into their sourcing practices.
Gotcha. So what kind of insights are we talking about? Just like a list of farms?
It's way more in-depth than that. They really delve into the specifics of their relationships with these farms and cooperatives. They highlight things like fair trade practices, farmer income transparency, even details about the communities where the coffee is grown.
Wow, so it's not just about saying we source ethically.
Mm.
They're really showing you the how and the why.
Exactly. And that level of transparency can be pretty rare in this industry.
That's true. It makes you wonder why more companies don't do this.
Right. Like,
Yeah.
what are they hiding?
Exactly.
Especially given what we know about the history of the coffee industry with colonialism and exploitation.
It's like they're trying to undo that legacy
It's so refreshing.
by being so open about their practices.
I love that. When I first heard about Two Kings, I was interested in their coffee, obviously.
Yeah.
But I'm honestly even more impressed with their mission and commitment to transparency.
Yeah.
They're proving that a business can be profitable and purpose-driven.
And that's a really powerful message to send.
Absolutely. It's like they're saying, hey, every cup of coffee is a chance to make a difference.
I love that.
Hmm.
So what do you think? Ready to give Two Kings a try?
I'm already adding a bag to my cart.
Me too.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of trying their Ethiopian Yirgacheffe.
Ooh, good choice. I've heard amazing things about that one. You know what else I appreciate about all of this?
What's that? It's really made me think differently about the coffee I drink. I used to just grab whatever was on sale, but now I'm way more aware of the impact my choices have.
It's like that saying, vote with your dollar.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think that's a great note to end on. Thanks for taking this deep dive with me.
Anytime. It's been a pleasure geeking out about coffee with you.
Until next time, happy brewing, everyone.
Morning light come shine, dreams of night unwind. Two Kings coffee grind, kickstart hot and